Welcome to the Compliance Experts podcast, hosted by VARTAN Consultancy. Miles Vartan and his guests, as experts in compliance and risk management, will guide you carefully and with clarity through the many sectors of compliance like health and safety, ISO and operator licenses, and the complexity of customs regulations. They'll also be talking about the latest legislation, global trade news, and the hot topics as they happen.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another podcast from the Compliance Experts, where we are going to be expanding upon our thoughts. So what we thought we would do as VARTAN Consultancy is have a chat internally. With me this morning, I've got Corinne Robinson, who's our General Manager, because Corinne and I have been developing the VARTAN Way website and trying to develop our strategy in terms of reaching out to companies. And we thought it'd be useful to expand upon our thoughts in terms of how you can positively manage your staff, how they come to work feeling that they're going to be able to contribute to your business in a positive way, and that they're going to go home in a sound, happy and physically, mentally fit state. We think that possibly this isn't an aspect where businesses, large businesses, when they're reaching out to companies looking for people to help them meet their commitments, maybe not always addresses this subject as positively as they could. So Corinne, welcome to the conversation, and let's get going. Having been on site at Sizewell, Corinne, I found myself in some quite large buildings with with large numbers of people, all with tasks to complete. And I got the impression that even out in the car park where people were putting up fences and they looked particularly safe and they were working in a safe way, it was pretty much an ordinary place. Once you got beyond the gates and you were actually on the site, it was pretty much an ordinary place. There was just a lot of people, a lot of cars, a lot of activity going on. But when I was standing actually in the office, I was struck by the silence in the office, that there wasn't a lot of chatter going on. We're working with an organisation called PS Human Resources, and I know that they've got something called banter training in place, where they're identifying the fact that banter respects boundaries, but bullying doesn't. Banter can often in offices, in traffic offices in Felixstowe or production offices at Sizewell, can lead to sort of destructive, negative aspects. How do you think that when you are trying to get people to work in a collegiate, collaborative way, what are your thoughts in terms of how you can encourage a positive, light-hearted way of working, but at the same time ensure that individuals, maybe with not on quite the same wavelength or bandwidth, don't take advantage of that if trying to pressure people to get work done?
Well, you used the word individuals there, and I think that probably is the key point. We are all individuals, and everybody brings along into the workplace their individual personalities, their own values, their own experiences, and that sort of shapes how they work and how they interact with others. I'm going to slightly take it off as different tangent now from a health and safety aspect, which is something that we, as a risk management consultancy, we help other businesses stay compliant when it comes to health and safety. When it comes to getting work at Sizewell C with the VARTAN Way, Sizewell C don't just want to see people tick boxes and say, yes, we comply with health and safety regulations. They really want to see them doing something a bit beyond that and a bit bigger than that. So what VARTAN are now offering is around health and wellness training and awareness. So that means you're not just looking at how your individuals come into the workplace. They don't come in as a robot and then they're told how to manage risk, and they're told to, the toolbox talks, all these box ticking stuff. Really, you need to go upstream from that and be aware of, has that person even eaten today? How did they sleep? All of those holistic issues around a person being a person and turning up at work and being able to do all the things that they're supposed to be doing in a safe way. So it's a lifestyle thing.
And I suppose if you looked at an organisation chart if you ask someone at Sizewell C Limited to provide you with an organisation chart, you would have your classical experience embedded within that organisation chart, backed up by people's CVs, where they've all worked in large businesses, they've worked with HR departments, they've been line managers, and they've had performance development reviews. But you can't see from when you're recruiting someone, you can't see and touch and feel this type of experience and these skills and abilities that you're talking about.
No, or lack thereof. And when you look holistically at a person, there are 4 main streams: relationships, exercise, career, and spirituality. And if you think of those as legs on a chair, if one of those is damaged or is missing, that's actually no longer a chair. That's no longer serving the purpose that it's there to do. So we need these 4 pillars of the chair to be in place and stable in order to be a holistically healthy person, being able to go about our day-to-day being the best versions of ourselves, really. So that's what we're sort of bringing along to the party. Health and safety is fine in the workplace, but just go upstream from that and have a look at the person. Yeah,
it's interesting you're talking about a chair with 4 legs. I was recently in front of the United Nations building in Geneva, and on the other side of the square there's a very large, it's a supersized wooden chair. It's huge. It's like the size of a building. It's massive, and it's got 3 legs. The leg there is part of a leg, so you've got 3 legs and part of the 4th leg which has been destroyed by something, and yet the chair is still upright. To this day, I still don't know how actually they make it stand upright. But the message that they're putting across is, even though that 4th leg isn't there, that you need to respect the chair. You need to be able to look after it. That person or that chair shouldn't be disadvantaged because the fact that they don't have the 4 legs which are firmly attached to the ground. So if you're looking after a group of people, and it might be at Sizewell, and they're coming to work every day, and it might be super hot, and yet you're insisting that they're going to wear all the PPE that they need, but it's going to make them very, very hot, that's going to affect their mental health and their performance. They know that they've got a job above all jobs by being able to work on this new, and they possibly don't want to put that job at risk by complaining or suggesting that they could wear different PPE that might be better and that would be easier to work within that temperature. So you've got this sort of circular, the need to have a circular flow of the ability to have information which you can put around the system so that you feel you're being listened to, and can get a demonstration that your bosses are going, well, yeah, definitely we need to change this. So have you had any experience prior to coming to work for us at VARTAN Consultancy, say in your other jobs, where possibly looking back, you could have made the companies you work within weren't maybe aligned, they could have done things better?
I definitely think, going back in time anyway, I think feelings have shifted more recently, going back in time. In the dark days when I was working in other careers, you very much just did as you were told. There wasn't really the flexibility to be looking at individuals as individuals. And I accepted it because that was normal then, as did everybody else. I think it was really only when I qualified in 2017 as a health coach that I became aware of this concept of bio-individuality. So that is that we are on the outside. Of course, we all have, pretty much 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we're all the same, except just looking around you, you can see that everyone looks entirely different. And everything on the inside that we don't see is exactly the same. We're all going to have a stomach, a heart, lungs, all that kind of thing. But it's all going to work slightly different, look slightly different. And to that end, we need to be treated differently. And the way we treat our own bodies, actually, we don't all follow the same diet because it doesn't work for everybody. It is about establishing what nourishes you on the outside and on the inside, and looking at small incremental ways to make your health better, being responsible for your own health, but equally for employers to try and help their employees find that path. And
So
it's about consistency as well.
So it's very much a part. For want of a better word, it's almost like a partnership, isn't it? So someone needs to tell someone what to do, but at the end of the day, there's a connection and a partnership between these two people. I personally think that we're stepping into almost like a brave new world for an awful lot of people. I know that a lot of people turning up in a beautiful place called Leiston to build Sizewell C move from construction site to construction site. They actually would prefer to live in a caravan rather than a posh accommodation centre. They'll have their kit with them. It might be welding, it might be steel fabrication, their protective boots and their hard hat. And it's another job. So, and they'll come with a certain assumption as to how they're going to be managed. So it's quite an interesting concept for someone to genuinely ask them, how are you? Because in the UK, we tend to say, well, I'm fine. But this person asking them how they are is genuinely wanting to know how they are, and might have some ideas, might have some new ideas how they could change their diet or change their attitude to alcohol or sleep or...
Yeah, it's all interlinked. I've got a better one for that question of how are you? How are you feeling today out of 10? Because you're going to get a real answer then.
Yes, yeah.
Because not a lot of people are going to say, 10, I'm feeling brilliant.
So it's the classic don't put words into people's mouths. Mm-hmm. How are you is almost like a truism, isn't it? It's like, I'm fine.
Yeah, and it has become almost part of the use of language. Hello, how are you? Without actual meaning behind it.
When the number of people getting seriously hurt at work was almost out of control, the Health and Safety Work Act 1974 had been brought in, and yet still people were coming to work and they were getting badly hurt and sometimes very sadly getting killed. So the Health and Safety Executive and the Institute Directors came up with and it's still in print and accessible, it's still current, effective leadership. It was all about what leaders needed to do to stop people from getting hurt at work. But it was, I think if you read it now, there wouldn't be many references to mental health or welfare. It's all about the physical side of things. If you were asked by a tier 1 at Sizewell C to come in to talk to them about this subject because someone felt that this might be the right thing to do, and picking up from your 0 to 10, where would your expectations be as you walked into the room out of 10 as to the ability of the people you're going to talk to receive your information and participate in your information effectively? Would you be almost assuming that you're going to be running up a downward moving escalator, or do you think that you would be able to relatively out of 10 be able to reach out to them and get them to associate and identify what you were saying?
That's a really hard question to answer. If I'm talking to people in the health and fitness industry, which is typically where I talk about this kind of stuff, they're up for it, because they're already on that path of wanting to better themselves. They just need to join the dots up. But I've worked in the construction industry, so I kind of know that without tarring people with the same brush, that there's a lot of peer group pressure. So even if deep down there's a few of them that might be like, actually, I'm really interested in this, you only need to get one sort of anti-anti, that soon spreads. But the sessions that I run are very interactive and personal and individual to each person that's sort of filling out the little questionnaire to find out what kind of body type they are or what their circle of life looks like. Once you start doing these little exercises, it becomes real to that individual, and they can see pictorially on the exercise that they've worked on where they need to work on areas of their life, be it exercise, nutrition, communities, because all of this, as I've mentioned, holistically is what makes you the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And I can relate to that in a number of ways. I decided that I should take up yoga because I was pulling muscles and getting issues from time to time. So I did my assessment from working with a professional yoga practitioner. And after the assessment, I looked at the assessment sheet and there were no numbers on the assessment sheet. And I said, why are there no numbers on my assessment sheet? And she said very nicely to me, because Miles, you didn't score on any of them. And hence your issues. So objectively, I became aware that there was something I needed to do here. I suppose listening to what you're saying, you're on a construction site. Essentially, something needs to be built, holes need to be dug, machinery needs to be moved. And as the construction site gets bigger and bigger and bigger, there's more people, more machines, but the critical path and the construction plan is progressing, and everything needs to be done on a certain date, at a certain time. So I've got to, listening to you in one of your sessions, I've got to go away, and possibly you might be asking me in the session, write 5 things that you've learned from listening to me today or participating in this event. I've got to go away and have the wherefore to identify how I could change what is established practice in the construction industry. Good established practice. People aren't getting hurt. Productivity is good. Staff turnover is low. At the same time, I can make things better. So I'm just wondering about some examples of how that could happen. So do you find that individuals or this situation can get better by actually putting time aside to actually talk to people, engage with people, rather than just working to a task list every morning?
Yeah, I think always interacting with people helps. If you have a number of steps that you could take to improve your health, and you start taking those little steps, just one every now and then, and consistently being good rather than occasionally being great, and you work on yourself, you suddenly feel much better, and that gives you the momentum to keep going, because we get very used to feeling rubbish, and that soon becomes normal, and you forget how good feeling good feels.
I've done a presentation, it was a while ago, it was early in the morning, I was down in Orpington, so I'd driven an hour and a half from Felixstowe, and then there was a lady in the front row of the audience who was listening to my presentation about a particularly boring subject, and she was going to sleep. I could actually see her going to sleep in front of me. No one else seemed to be too bothered about it. It was almost like it was the norm. It turned out that she had a drink problem and had come to work under the influence of alcohol, because she'd drunk quite a lot before she'd come to work, either that night or even in the morning. And yet she did a good job, she actually achieved her tasks and things were done, but at the same time, a functioning alcoholic. I've seen people stand up, they're tasked with talking about the latest pay negotiation situation and literally just read from a sheet because they haven't got the courage to look at the people they're managing and explain the situation to them.
And to empathise how that's going to land.
With them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Contrary to that, I have seen someone do that who, everybody laughs about it, but he runs to work every day. So he runs to work, he has his shower, he goes to work, and he is the epitome of fitness and happiness and healthiness. So he runs because he enjoys it, he's able to, but his whole attitude to life and work is positive. I know that you come to work with a big drinks bottle, and your target during the day...
That's not alcoholic drink.
No.
Hasten to add.
H2O.
Yeah.
So your target during the day, whilst you're at work, is to get through your 2 litres of water.
3.
Because you know that your mind and your body is going to work better by being hydrated.
The body has got an amazing ability to heal itself, given half the chance. And that is what we are trying to get people to realise. Give your body a chance and it will heal itself and you will feel so much better than you would imagine you would feel.
Yeah. I'm coming around to the drinking bit and all the consequences of drinking that amount of water and getting used to it, and I've begun to appreciate the benefits myself. The subject I may be a bit more of a specialist in is sleep. Statistically, we know that 5 people every day die on the roads because of road traffic accidents. And it's tragic, and a number of those accidents aren't investigated. There is a perception and a feeling that a number of these accidents are caused by tiredness. And if we have a lack of sleep and we're building up a sleep deficit, our body and our mind works almost as if we're drunk. So I'm trying to apply this now to a construction site. So my job is to drive a huge dumper truck where I can't see anybody else apart from the horizon. So anybody around me I can't see because I'm just on such a big truck. I have some technical devices which alert me when somebody is around me, or actually maybe cameras that show me, but at the same time I'm tired and I'm now driving this huge truck where, a bit like one of these electric cars, if you put your foot on the acceleration pedal, you get instant acceleration, there's no drag. So driving one of these huge trucks, I'm driving something that could seriously hurt other people or equipment or plant or fences or whatever. So if I'm tired, this is quite a jeopardising situation. And if my manager needs to know, he needs to be aware that I'm tired and perhaps Miles shouldn't be driving this truck today. But likewise, I need to be able to feel confident about going to speak to someone and telling them, my colleagues, about it, or my supervisor or my boss, that maybe I should be doing something different today. And is there someone I can speak to about why I can't sleep? What are my problems? I mean, there might be all sorts of reasons which are affecting my sleep. Post-traumatic stress. I could have a dependency problem. I could have a financial problem. We need to, I think companies, as they're thinking about applying for work at Sizewell, and they've got to fill in the expression of interest and then the various other forms and the applications which follow once you're accepted. I mean, we know, don't we, that there's page after page after page of documents and processes that you have to submit. And the last thing it asks you is about welfare of people. I think there's definitely a need for people to become more aware of the management of people in terms of welfare. Even in your fitness environment that you're working in, when you're talking to people who are receptive, out of the 10 people you're talking to, do all 10 get it straight away, or are some on a journey in terms of...
Definitely. Again, it comes down to, we're talking about individuals here, not robots. Yeah. So everyone, a lot of people I find will just go along doing the thing because you're telling them to do the thing. And eventually, as I say, with the momentum and with how it makes them feel, it just then becomes a habit. And they're building it in. And things like drinking more water, practicing cooking from scratch, eating less processed food, building healthy relationships, setting boundaries, re-evaluating unhealthy relationships, enjoying regular exercise, finding what you love, getting enough quality sleep. So there's a whole thing about sleep hygiene and how to improve your sleep, because it's just going back to your previous example, it's all very well turning up at work knowing that you've got to drive this big dumper truck, but you haven't had enough sleep. But you're responsible. I mean, you know your job, so it is your responsibility in a way to make sure that you're getting good sleep hygiene, as well as your responsibility to be alerting those you report to that you're feeling a little under par today.
It's interesting because I've been involved with various insurance people, and when they're coming to investigate an accident and a claim, might be a personal injury claim, and you used to be shocked by the question was, okay, so you are employing a professional lorry driver who has got a license. He's passed his medical or her medical, but he or she has hit their head as they've been engaging the fifth wheel under the truck. You say, well, that's exactly how the accident happened. And then the insurance company person will say, well, can you demonstrate to me how this person was trained? And traditionally, it's a case of, well, they've had their induction, they've read the safe system of work, I've got a signature and a date. And the question will come back again, yes, but how can you demonstrate to me how they were actually trained? Because often it doesn't go much beyond that. Predominantly, the person hasn't been taken out and said, right, I want you to put a hard hat on, go and engage the fifth wheel, and I will show you how to do this better. Largely because of time and cost, and the person hasn't got that time to do it. If we then think about what we're talking about, and someone is not coming into work because they're feeling stressed, they don't feel happy in the environment, the community they're working within. They think they're being bullied, but don't know how to register this concern. I think managers are going to need an awful lot of training in terms of A, understanding what we're talking about, B, actually having methods and learning ways of following this good practice and this way of thinking. Mm-hmm. Is it, in your experience, can this be done through like role play on a course, or is it, here's some ideas, go away and we'll talk about it, apply it over the next couple of weeks, come back and then we'll talk about how your experience is and how you've got on?
I have this tool called a circle of life, and if you can imagine, it looks like a pizza on paper, and each segment represents an area of your life: career, your family, your nutrition, exercise, many segments, and you're sort of plotting on that segment your level of satisfaction in that area. And that dot, the nearer the centre of the pizza is, that's where your level of satisfaction is pretty poor. You know, you're not satisfied in that area. If you've got a high level of satisfaction, you're going to plot your dot at the periphery of the pizza. So then on that sort of pizza, you join up all the dots, and the idea is to have a circle of dots. If you have a circle with a great big dent in it, that means that you're dissatisfied in an area. So that's the area you want to work on.
Or you've left a whole load of crusts.
Yes. So the idea is that you will review that. So you'll go back in a month's time and you'll again plot your area of satisfaction, and you'll see, okay, so maybe I need to work. You don't try and heal everything all at one time, but you'll look at working on another area. So ultimately you do get this near perfect circle where everything in your life is fulfilled.
And you're influenced, aren't you? So we hear so much about influences now and people being influenced. I was on last couple of days, I've been on 2 busy commuter trains, hot days, one morning and one evening. And I found myself on both occasions not being able to get a chair to sit down. And I looked down the carriage and everybody was on a mobile phone. All had some earpods in, was listening to a podcast or something, and knowing that they had to do this every day. And in terms of preserving their sanity, this is the way in which there's 1 or 2 people were actually asleep and had set alarms to wake themselves up so they didn't end up in Norwich rather than get off in Ipswich. But it's quite a challenging situation, so they know they're going to go into this environment every day. They have to get that train. It's always going to be a fight for a seat. And their brain is being schooled and conditioned to be able to put up with this because this is part of the job. If you want the job, you want the remuneration package, you have to travel on the train effectively. But so they've accepted this problem and these challenges, and the way of coping with it is by looking at stuff on their phone or listening to something or reading something. But it very much is like on an individual basis. Like you couldn't hear, there must have been, in the carriage I was in, there must have been 60, 70, 80 people, and you could hear a pin drop. No one was talking to anybody. So it was like, in the world we're in now, we're getting used to not talk to people and not participate and not help people.
Yeah, community is one of the segments on the pizza, funny enough. And there is a community in Pennsylvania called the Rosetto community. And I think it was in the 50s and 60s when this test was carried out. They did nothing but eat meatballs fried in lard, smoked heavily, and drunk wine. So all the things, not a bit of kale in sight, all the things that were deemed to be unhealthy, yet because of their huge sense of community, they were reported to have really high levels of health. Now, since then, the levels of that community, because obviously the younger generations have fallen into the Western ways of, not being so much part of the community, being, as you say, on the phones all the time, the levels of their health have come down in where you would expect to find a community who ate meatballs fried in lard and smoked heavily and drank wine. But it's so interesting that when they were at the peak of being this big community spirit, caring for each other, their health wasn't impacted by their diet.
And also, the people selling that food to them and providing these facilities for them to eat to had a financial investment and interest in perpetuating this lifestyle. It's interesting. You made me smile when you talked about kale. So I've tried to cook kale a number of times and failed dismally. I can't get it to...
Massage it first.
Right, I have not been massaging my kale.
You need to massage your kale. You need to massage your kale first with oil.
So we've got our community, we've got our pizza circle, we've got our which we can review, so we can identify how we can improve upon things, either through our own perception and seeing where we're getting it wrong, other people obviously not appreciating our approach and not doing what we want them to do because they're not engaged and they don't sign up to this agenda I'm on. I'm trying to look after myself and look after them. So rather like companies who are putting on specific banter training to cope with sitting in sitting and talking with people and being able to cope with either the way that words have been put to you or how you should address other people. Specific training needs to be designed to address this issue that we're talking about. Yeah. And if we can get companies to A, sign up to it, B, live it, and C, deliver it, then when they're applying for work at somewhere that might be called Sizewell C, the company which they're presenting to the people who are offering the work is going to be a much more fulfilling, a company with firm foundations, so that each chair is going to have 4 legs, and if it doesn't have 4 legs, the 3-legged person or the 3-legged chair is life has been adapted to enable that chair to remain stable. I think it's a fascinating subject.
Yeah, I mean, the whole ethos, actually, if you think about when you're talking health and safety in the workplace, you're always thinking about prevention. Prevention is the better thing than the worst outcome that could be of some sort of disaster because people weren't being careful and managing health and safety in the right way. So the same applies to your health. It doesn't come from treating the symptoms. That is the outcome. We want to be looking at prevention of dis-ease. And I'm saying it that way because dis-ease is an unease. It's the opposite of ease is what disease is.
Yes.
So we need to prevent that by taking care of ourselves and not treat symptoms. I've got heartburn. Oh, yeah, well, you need some Rennies or other brands are available.
Exactly.
You need to be working out what's going on in my gut. Why isn't my gut microbiome as good as it ought to be? And why am I getting heartburn? Something isn't right. Your body is telling you.
Exactly. Your body is telling you. Now, I had an issue a long time ago with gastroenteritis. I went to see the GP. He sat in front of me and he had 4 packets on the table in front of him. And he said to me, Miles, you choose which one you want. And I said, what are you saying to me? And he opened up his drawer, pulled them all off the table, closed the drawer, and he said, all of them will make you feel better. But actually, I need to establish why you've got gastroenteritis and what is causing your gut to make you feel so uncomfortable, which is exactly what you're saying. It's exactly what you're saying. And we're as Vartan are talking to a company who isn't from the UK, who wants to set up an operation in the UK. They're on the border of the EU and I suppose, almost like the Middle East. And the question they've asked me is, in the UK, do you have to have they're a manufacturing operation, so do you have to have a doctor permanently at your place of work? And I've replied and said, well, no, actually.
It's barely easy to get a doctor at their place of work.
What we do in the UK is we assess the risks and the hazards and the dangers of work, and then we plan our systems of work around that so that you're not going to get hurt. We're talking about mental health, welfare, and all this type of stuff, as well as the physical side of things. But this culture where this company is coming from, their legislation in law, in writing, says you have to have a doctor permanently on site, rather than addressing the issues as to why that doctor needs to be there, because you're almost assuming people are going to get hurt. So rather like the society that you talked about in America with the lard and the meatballs and the wine and the large portions, supersized portions, and the doctor having to be on site. We're in a lucky place in the UK. We're actually able to talk about, we're doing a podcast talking about this subject, which people are going to listen to. But it's still going to be a challenge, I think, to get companies to pick up that cudgel and go, we'd like to talk to you about this, but we'd be delighted to, as VARTAN Consultancy, to help them and with all your experience and your knowledge. So I think everything that we can do in helping companies address these issues and making their workforce happier and in a better place.
Yeah. And also, actually, I think from an employee's point of view, if you know that your company is investing in you, that is really meaningful.
Yeah. And, stop talking about employers and employees. We're all individuals.
Yeah,
we're
we
all
are.
people
Yeah, we are.
who happen to be in the same place trying to do a job.
Yeah, that's right.
We actually are at work more than we're at home.
Yeah.
So it's as important to look after ourselves at work as we would naturally do at home.
Or to just not even define that there's a break between the two.
It's a 24-hour existence.
Yeah, yeah.
Corinne, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
And I look forward to discussing this further. And for those listening, we would really enjoy and welcome the opportunity to talk to you about this subject. As per usual, we're always looking for new subjects to talk about and about how we can further develop the VARTAN Way, where, as we've now established today, it's all about individuals. Many thanks and look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Compliance Experts podcast. We highly value your input and welcome any questions, thoughts or challenges for us to tackle in forthcoming episodes. VARTAN Consultancy pride themselves in helping customers manage risk and subsequently helping them improve their overall company performance. To speak to Miles and his team, visit VARTANconsultancy.com. This podcast is produced and managed by podtalk.co.uk and is the copyright of VARTAN Consultancy. This podcast is created for entertainment purposes only. Views and opinions are that of VARTAN Consultancy and their guests. Information recorded in this episode was deemed correct at the time of recording. However, we advise you to always check with VARTAN Consultancy for up-to-date information and legislation.